Okay, we're here with Bill Courtney, longtime NYPD officer, worked a lot of interesting cases, but also has an interesting backstory in life himself. And you're from?
I'm from the beautiful Bronx, New York, the boogie down Bronx. Yeah, I grew up in the 60s and 70s in the Bronx. Up until the time I was about 10 years old, everything was good. Well, you know, we were kind of surrounded by hostile forces. You know, back then the Irish didn't get along with the Italians.
What year were you born?
The whites versus the blacks. There was a lot of street beefs. I was born in '62.
So you were growing up basically in the 70s.
Well, there is absolutely no doubt about one thing concerning this blackout. There was terror in a lot of neighborhoods last night. Police have described the looters as animals. Thousands were arrested, 78 policemen injured, one of them shot in the leg. He's okay.
Harlem, the Bronx Fordham section, Bedford-Stuyvesant and Brooklyn, and Jamaica Queens were among the hardest hit.
Yeah, New York was on, a really bad downfall. The city was broke.
The mayor's asked for federal guarantees for New York City bonds and notes, and if necessary, emergency loans. The first answer from the Ford administration was a loud, firm no.
Garbage men were on strike. Robberies and homicides had hit numbers never seen before.
Good evening. We're coming off the bloodiest year in the history of New York, 1,784 homicides. And we're starting off the new year with at least 10 murders in the city today.
So that's what life was like in the Bronx back then. You're a good kid, basically a good kid. You're up to some mischief here and there, but these tough guys, these bad guys in the neighborhood, they were right around you.
Impeded, 2 angels were shot, and quite frankly, it's something that you see every day in this town.
You know what? When you ventured out of your neighborhood, there was a little bit of fear because, like I said, there was an Italian and Irish animosity. There was all sorts of strange things going on that dated back to when our parents and grandparents came over from the other side. And there was a lot of competitive, there was a competitive nature in between the ethnicities. The Irish were the first in, they spoke English, and so they got a lot of the good jobs right off the bat. And then they were followed by Russians and Italians, everyone else. So there was a little bit of animosity between people and social class wars and things like that.
It's extraordinary mixture of races, languages, and creeds. New York is unique because of the New Yorkers. And the best place to meet them is on the streets.
It sounds like there wasn't a strong, white identity. It was you were Irish or Italian.
Yeah, if you said to somebody, hey, what are you? The answer would be, I'm Irish, and you
wouldn't be white.
It would be, yeah, but that was a common thing to say. Hey, what are you?
Yeah.
And you would know immediately what they were talking about. So it was strange. A lot of people don't know that about white New Yorkers or East Coast people is we can trace our, lineage. We know when we came over. So we were a whole different class of white, you know what I mean? We really had ties to our former country of origin. So.
And so growing up Irish, of course, the Irish got into the New York police heavy early. So you had a lot. What you said, when was the first member of your ancestor a New York police officer?
Yeah, so one of my father's, I guess he'd be like a great cousin or second cousin, a guy named George Meany. He came on in the 1800s.
Like 1880s or something?
Yeah, like 1880s, 1890s, real early on. And ever since then, we've had a presence. Up until now, I'm the last one, and my kids they don't want any part of it, thank God. So, yeah, so growing up, I knew my dad was worked for the NYPD's intelligence division, and he worked on Black Liberation Army cases, FALN cases.
What's FLN?
FALN was like a Puerto Rican nationalist group.
They were blowing stuff up.
Yeah, they blew up Fraunces Tavern, which is an old tavern in the Wall Street area where George Washington actually had been. And
today marks 50 years since the deadly FALN terrorist bombing at the historic Fraunces Tavern in Manhattan.
Victims, families, and NYPD officers who responded to the blast will gather today to remember that day and call for justice. Natalie Dudrich is live in Lower Manhattan. Natalie.
Well, good morning, Mary Cindy. This is a significant piece of New York City history. Back in 1975, this building here right behind us, the Francis Tavern at 54 Pearl Street, was bombed. This attack shook the city. And today at 11 o'clock, there is a lunch followed by a press conference that is for the families of the victims and the police who responded that day. Now, no one was ever charged, and some family members have continued a decades-long quest for justice. On that day, a Wall Street crowd was having lunch when explosives detonated, killing 4 people, injuring dozens, and severely damaging the building. A plaque inside still honors those victims.
There were some deaths.
Yeah, and then, the BLA was shooting at cops back then.
They killed just.
Yeah, in New York.
Yeah.
And New Jersey.
And that's what Tupac's mother was associated. I don't want to associate her with murdering police, but she was like, that was one.
Herman Bell, then a member of the Black Liberation Army, now 70 years old. The parole board saying he's been a model inmate who deserved freedom. The 2 murdered cops lured to the Wrangell houses in Upper Manhattan by a bogus 911 call all those years ago.
Joseph Piagentini and his partner, Waverly Jones, were ambushed by Bell and 2 other members of the Black Liberation Army. Jones died instantly. Wounded, Piagentini begged for his life.
And this animal took his weapon and pumped 22 rounds into him. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I think that they're kind of unique people, and I think unique maybe in a bad way, who gravitate towards like nationalist groups and things like that, because, there certainly was a hierarchy, de facto leaders in those groups, and they did preach violence. So when you got hooked up with the BLA, whether it was from the neighborhood, from school, there's the potential for real violence, so.
Her name is Assata Shakur. In the United States, she is known by the police and FBI as Joanne Chesimard, one of the nation's most wanted fugitives. Wanted for what police describe as the cold-blooded execution of a New Jersey state trooper back in the 70s. She denies it and says of the state cops,
they want to just kill me. They want to see me dead.
Chesimard was convicted in the killing of Trooper Werner Foster and the wounding of another trooper in a furious shootout on the New Jersey Turnpike in East Brunswick. That's where Chesimard was wounded.
So there were the outspoken, vocal members, the people that stood out, but they were also in competition with other people within the organization, somewhat similar to, the Nation of Islam when, Farrakhan and Malcolm X. There wasn't room for rising stars in that area, and so there was a lot of conflicts in those organizations.
And your father's division is the one that had the black officer that infiltrated Malcolm X.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The Quarantine Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The FBI and New York police departments are facing new calls to finally open their records related to the assassination of Malcolm X, shot dead 56 years ago at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, February 21st, 1965. This comes after the release of a deathbed confession of a former undercover New York police officer who admitted to being part of a broad New York police and FBI conspiracy targeting Malcolm. In the confession, the former officer, Raymond Wood, who died last year, admitted he entrapped 2 members of Malcolm's security team in another crime, a plot to blow up the Statue of Liberty, just days before the assassination. On Saturday, Ray Wood's cousin, Reggie Wood, read the letter at a news conference at the Shabazz Center in Harlem.
It was my assignment to draw the 2 men into a felonious federal crime so that they could be arrested by the FBI and kept away from managing Malcolm X's Audubon Ballroom door security on February 21st, 1965.
In his letter, Raymond Wood also revealed he was inside the Audubon Ballroom at the time of Malcolm's assassination. At least one other undercover New York police officer, Gene Roberts, was also inside after infiltrating the security team of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, the group Malcolm founded after leaving the Nation of Islam. Both officers, Wood and Roberts, were part of the Bureau of Special Services and Investigations, or BOSSI, a secretive political intelligence unit of the NYPD nicknamed the Red Squad. Following Malcolm's assassination, police arrested 3 members of the Nation of Islam for his murder. But questions about the guilt of the men have lingered for decades. In his letter, Raymond Wood openly says one of the men, Thomas Johnson, was innocent and was arrested to, quote, protect my cover and the secrets of the FBI and the NYPD, unquote. Ray Wood's letter echoes claims in recent books by Manning Marable and Les Payne that some of Malcolm's actual assassins were never charged. In a moment, we'll be joined by Raymond Wood's cousin Reggie Wood, who released his deathbed confession. But first, I want to turn to the words of Malcolm X himself, speaking after his home in Queens was firebombed just a week before his assassination, February 14th, 1965.
My house was bombed. It was bombed by the black Muslim movement upon the orders of Elijah Muhammad. Now, they had come around they had planned to do it from the front and the back so that I couldn't get out. They covered the front completely, the front door. Then they had come to the back, but instead of getting directly in the back of the house and throwing it this way, they stood at a 45-degree angle and tossed it at the window, so it glanced and went onto the ground. And the fire hit the window, and it woke up my second oldest baby. But the fire burned on the outside of the house. But had that one gone through that window, it would have fallen on a 6-year-old girl, a 4-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old girl. And I'm going to tell you, if it had done it, I'd taken my rifle and gone after anybody in sight. I would not wait. And I say that because of this. The police know the criminal operation of the black Muslim movement because they have thoroughly infiltrated it.
Because they have thoroughly infiltrated it. Those are the words of Malcolm X.
Not only did they infiltrate different organizations, they actually traveled to other states. They would say, hey, we're going to a demonstration in Detroit, or we're going down to Baltimore to do something. And a lot of them had been involved in acts of violence where they were there, they were present. And, and in the fashion of the NYPD, when the city started to have financial trouble, they started to eliminate a lot of these undercover units. And all those officers who endangered their lives were just sent back to patrol. And a lot of them had not even went through the police academy. They were grabbed before they went through the police academy. Trained. So they had to go through training, whatever, and they started off all over. And I know my father and some bigger bosses were very vocal about getting them their just due, which was, a detective shield. And so that's always been the theme of the NYPD. There's a lot of great work is done, but there's also a lot of political intrigue and things that go on that kind of, make the waters kind of uneasy to navigate.
The cops, if you was Latin or you was American Negro and they saw you, you had a problem.
And talk about how massive of a bureaucratic institution. I mean, NYPD is gigantic.
Well, in my era, I think we hit something like 39,000 guys. So, and like out of that 39,000, it was probably like 5,000 detectives, 6,000 detectives. And when you became a detective, you came in as a third-grade detective, and you made a few $1,000s more than a cop. And then your goal was to become a second-grade detective and then a first-grade detective. And a first-grade detective makes a considerable amount more money than a police officer, somewhat like close to lieutenant's pay. And so within the detective division of the NYPD, there's a lot of competition, a lot of people trying to get the big case, a lot of people trying to solve all the homicides they can, so they'll get those bumps to second or first grade. And if there was 6,000 detectives, there was probably only 1,000 second grade and 500 first grade. So the competition was fierce, but I think it's what made our investigators the best in the country, because there was so much competition and there was so much volume that you really learned. There was not any situation that you hadn't come across, So that made us unique from any other department, and we considered ourselves worldwide. I mean, we've had officers killed outside the country in the furtherance of investigations.
So it was so large. It was almost like it had an FBI element to it.
Absolute, yeah. And the FBI and various federal agencies realized that, and whenever possible, started task forces to invite us in and to use our town. And, it worked out very well for Yeah.
And what year did you join the force? And what, of course, NYPD had gotten infamous for corruption, especially in the 70s, but it still lasted. What year did you start, and what was the state of the force, and what did you feel about corruption?
I came on in '83, and we had Mayor Koch.
Comparing New York City today with what it was last year, crime is appreciably down. But nevertheless, it still exists, and exists in a way that gets people upset.
And he liked cops. It was a positive atmosphere as far as you knew you had the support of City Hall.
2 years ago, the city was beset with more than 100,000 robberies. This year, thanks in part to a crackdown on armed hold-up teams, robberies and crimes across the board were down somewhat. John Miller has details.
On the subject of street crime, the mayor was armed with favorable statistics about 1983. As compared with 82, homicide was down almost 5%. Robbery was down 13%. Auto theft was down 15%. Across the board, a 10% reduction in serious felony crimes.
We were coming back from a really bad recession, really bad economic times, and the department had created internal affairs units and things to combat the old school methods of police work with the corruption that came with it, which really was just similar to the corruption of the political machine that had been set up back in the Tammany Hall days. And so, it was a different era. I never saw any kind of corruption at all, but I knew people that got jammed up for it.
Would a lot of the corruption tend to have been in the drug, because there was money and it was easy to steal money? And you didn't really work drugs per se. What was your big assignment after you?
Yeah, I mean, I ended up in a DEA task force. Well, no, early on, yeah, I was got into plainclothes units real early in my career, and it was mostly, making arrests for just hunting around in plainclothes, specific area, looking for robberies. That was basically, and there were plenty of. Most of the robbery work I did initially, as far as being a plainclothesman, was in Manhattan. There was a lot of, chain snatches, bag snatches, stick-ups.
Times Square area?
Yeah, a lot of strong arm stuff, the occasional guns. And then later on in my career, when I became a detective and I worked in robbery squads, we were doing patterns, and they were almost always gun robberies, kind of like commercial kind of patterns, where once you caught one crew, you could close out about 20, 30 cases of the things they had done. And these guys were going away for jail for considerable amount of time, 25 years, 30 years. So,
and were most of them? Or you think they were fueling drug habits, or they were just chose robbery as their hustle?
They chose robbery as their hustle.
Or sold them drug addicts.
They were just stick-up guys. They, maybe they weren't smart enough to count money, so they avoided the narcotics business, which is, it's all about the accounting, So, and maybe they didn't have that charisma to run an organization, because it does take some leadership skills. And then stick-up guys really were they were kind of like legendary in their neighborhoods. You stayed awake, you saw that guy coming down the block, you knew he was the real deal. And
it's like the original 50 Cent.
Yeah, he's not gonna rob somebody, just some nobody. He's going after somebody where he's gonna get a payday. And those guys, they changed with the times too, because now narcotics became so big and so lucrative. Why mess with stick?
When was that happening? Like mid-'80s?
The late 80s, once crack started, forget about it. For the next 10 years, well, let's say 86 and on, the next 10 years, it was out of control. So a lot of money to be made, a lot of turf wars, a lot of shootings.
What were some of the neighborhoods you got put in?
I guess
other than Times Square.
Throughout my career, the worst neighborhoods I worked in was probably, and this is just getting assigned to work for a short period of time, looking for robberies, looking for whatever, would be like the 4-6 precinct in the Bronx.
What was that?
5 precinct.
Or was it?
No, it's kind of like, probably one neighborhood north of the Yankee Stadium.
Oh, okay. Never like where Webster Ave and all that is?
Yeah, it's all kind of close. And then Brooklyn, the 7-5, the 7-7, 7-9,
Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights,
Bed-Stuy, Brownsville,
New York.
East Flatbush was another lovely area at the time. So, and they were bad areas. And like, I think Michael Franzese, somebody asked me, like, how did you feel? Were you ever scared or whatever? And, I said, some nights, like, the whole week was really crazy, and you'd be going to work and you'd be thinking about it, and your chest started, like, heart started,
even
skipping a little bit, like, here it goes, let's see what, and then other nights, you'd just be like, nothing. So it depended on where you were at in your head, you know what I mean?
So were you staking people out, or we're just sitting over here and waiting on something to happen?
A lot of times it was playing the radio to see what was going on, or, you could play the radio and just try to be the first one there to get the arrest, or look for this, put a description over. And then there was a lot of hunting. You just go out and hunt for guns. You see somebody he'd look at, you take off running, and, you chase them. There was a lot of stuff like that. But
did you ever have shot at, guns pulled on?
Yeah, lots of that stuff.
Well, that didn't, anything that was close to...
Nah, I was real lucky. I was around for some real violent situations, but I did okay. I just, I was
gonna say, Russian shoot anybody?
No. I don't like talking about that.
Okay.
No. But, it's, it was a crazy time, and everybody you knew had a life-threatening story. Like everybody came close once. They almost got their gun taken away from them in a fight in the street.
Because that was a thing. People would try to take cops' guns.
Yeah. A lot of crazy stuff. So it really, guys who worked in the ghetto, which I never really was a ghetto cop. We get assigned there at times for, different units I was in. But the day-to-day grind of a ghetto cop, what they go through is amazing, and how some of these guys work their whole career there it's pretty amazing. On a 4 to 12 in the early 90s, when you went on, you turned that ignition on and turned the radio on, you were holding 7-8 jobs from the previous tour, and they were robberies, serious assaults, and so you could barely keep everything together, and somehow or another, precincts managed to just somehow keep up with the volume. Sometimes other precincts would jump in and take a couple of jobs from different sectors to try to help them out, but it was bad. And people don't realize the amount of danger they were subjected to, the hostility that came from like these really crazy indigent people who they solve all their problems with violence and threats, and they put on these big elaborate shows that takes a very minor problem and blow it up into a full-scale riot out in the street, And so, you really have to give the uniformed cops out there the credit, because they are the backbone of the police. Being a detective has its own other set of problems, but, there's a little bit of, there's like a, it's kind of sexy to be a detective. You wear the suit, you got the gold shield hanging in your pocket on the scene of a homicide. That's what people see on TV. Yeah. They don't see these poor guys suffering in some of these really tough precincts, and are more apt, I think, to not cooperate than other ethnicities. I think they keep that street code still holds a little weight, nothing like it used to. But yeah, it was fairly easy to get one cooperator on a case,
which is all you really
enough to get corroboration, enough to match up phones you were listening to, things like that.
So you were doing all Hispanic targets, or
all Colombians?
All Colombians.
Yeah.
93 or something, and there's a big change. Bratton and all, like, talk about that whole shit, Giuliani and Comstat.
Yeah. So we had some really bad mayors over the years, and
meaning what? Not supportive of the police?
Not supportive of the police, unable to handle problems with community unrest, just anything you could do wrong, they would do. And the one tactic they had for fighting crime was to just throw more police into a certain area. And they'd have 10 cops on one street corner, and there would be a shootout right across the street. So when Giuliani got in, he ended up hiring Bill Bratton. Bill Bratton hooked up with a guy named Jack Maple, who was a seasoned lieutenant. And they devised this system called Comstat that basically held all the precinct commanders, it took them to task. It was like, now we're going to run this like a business. How come you're not solving this problem? You got 10 shootings out there. What are you doing? Go out there and enforce every single law you can, from drinking a beer on the corner, urinating, spitting, anything you can. You're going to enforce it, and we're going to bring these neighborhoods back so that they're a safe place. And so they would go out, and there's a guy drinking. They'd pat him down, get his ID, run a warrant, take him away if he had one. Or, I think the biggest lesson there was when people are watching from the sidelines, they're going, oh shit, I'm glad I didn't bring my gun out, because they're patting everybody down now. This never happened before. You only got patted down when you fit the description of somebody. So
you feel stop and frisk was effective?
Stop and frisk was totally effective. And what the problem, I guess, years later, under the leadership of Police Commissioner Kelly, he inherited a police department that had historic lows in crime. And he really wanted to, make his name, make his mark. And he became so big with having guys out there confronting the public and using stop and frisk as a means to, bring the crime stats even further, which was almost impossible.
So it did go too far, you think?
Well, what happened so you start a unit, you tell guys, all right, I want you to get out there, I want you to write 10 summonses a day, and, you should be stopping people here with do 5 stop and frisks.
There were quotas.
So, yeah, there was definitely quotas.
So that could mean if there wasn't that much action, you're kind of maybe doing
you
it.
Grab some nerd and you said, what's your name? Hey, come here, you don't have anything. Like, what's your name? And you write it down and you go on your business. So a good kid in the ghetto, or even, whatever neighborhood it was, is like, what are these cops coming up and touching me for and talking to me? I didn't do anything, And then the politicians got involved and they created the outrage of it. But that's entirely the fault of the NYPD brass at the time. They should have been happy with the results that the previous administration had and kept things at that level. And we all, to this day, we would have been fine. But, that's it. That's history. Nothing we can do about it.
Do you remember gangs because they were known for robbery, Decepticons and lowlifes?
Yeah, so that was kind of like, so you had places like the Fulton Mall in Brooklyn, that would be like a pack of kids would run through there. They rob everybody, started off with robbing people and then going and buying stuff. Or you see someone go and buy a football jersey that was your side from Vim or one of those places, and they rob you. And they get on the train, or they go to a school when school let out, and they would just rob everybody. And that's basically the word. And they would say decept, all this ridiculous stuff. But that was kind of like the beginning of gangs in New York, because traditionally,
or the rebirth,
there was no real gangs in New York. Their headhunters, guys would wear colors, and that was like to feel important. People who had nothing wanted to have some kind of identity. Yes, they did bad things, but not like packs of them just going to schools and robbing people. This is something that's completely unheard of. And was also a time where you couldn't tell poor people anymore. Everybody had nice clothes. Like when I was a kid, we wore the same pair of Converse for a year. And when your heel started to get dull, you shoved
whore.
We put baseball cards in the bottom. We wait for our next pair. And that's a middle class kid. But you could tell poor kids. They had shitty clothes. They looked bad. And they came in everywhere. Like you couldn't tell who was who anymore because everyone got a piece. And that was the big thing now, to keep up with the styles.
You think a lot. So the crime with the young people was driven a lot by just being a desire for consumer goods.
Right, but having that chain, getting an 8-ball jacket, a sheepskin hat. Like there was all these fashion crazes that came out. And a lot of that had to do too with the culture at the time, like hip hop maybe and stuff. And people had that street neighborhood uniform from where they came from. Everyone was a little different, whether it was the South Bronx or Brooklyn.
What was the differences in the South Bronx, would say Brooklyn or Harlem?
They all have their distinct, I don't know.
Harlem was a lot of organized drug stuff, right?
Yeah, I could tell you what, the Bronx was the darkest place going. They had very few street lights. It was eerie.
I mean, literally dark.
Yeah, you would drive down these streets like Driggs Avenue, and they were like dark. You couldn't see a damn thing. And, you know, it was really dangerous. Kind of similar to neighborhoods like Bed-Stuy, same kind of thing. Narrow streets, lots of people, dim lighting, really dangerous. But everyone had their own kind of thing, you know. People in Harlem, I'll never forget, this hitman, his street name was Manny Dog, and he got hired to do some hits out in Queens. And,
this is in the Supreme case.
Yeah, and what he told me was, he said that this guy Wayne Davis, who hooked him up with Supreme, said, all right, listen, these guys, they're from South Jamaica or whatever. They're not like us. You gotta, you watch it with them and kind of guide them because they're a little weird, they're a little weird, they're a little crazy. So,
they seem to be more extreme?
The Harlem gangsters seem to be more, what they would say smarter, a little bit more sophisticated, and the Queens guys were just running amok. So he said, you'll get paid, do the hit, but, watch these guys. They're getting, make sure they don't do stupid stuff.
So, okay, we can segue. So at some point you get tasked with going after the Queens. So, Doug, how'd you then, you started getting put on these specific cases?
Well, what happened with me was I was in the DEA task force.
What year?
Like 95 through 2000.
Oh, for a long time. Yeah. Oh, so you did work a lot in drug cases?
Yeah. Well, we were a Colombian group. We did a lot of once we hit a tractor trailer for 1,641 kilos.
Oh, that's one of the big, huge.
And then we'd hit 100 at a time.
All the time.
A lot, hit a bag of money, 300 grand, a few times a year with the money, a few times.
Was that Jackson Heights or that was all over?
All over. At that time, they had moved out into different, nicer areas of Queens, more middle class, upper middle class neighborhoods. Rent a nice house, drive your car into the garage, unload it, get the car out, and use very low key cars. Don't speak on the phone. Go to these, we used to call them cabins or cabinas, and they would go and they would make long distance calls to Colombia from there. So they would, the calls wouldn't be traced. And they were real sophisticated, fun, crimes of wit and deception, not the crimes of the brutality of the street. So it was a nice change for me. And on one of the cases we were working, a Dominican guy was supposed to be possible guy who was going to take over the route for some Colombians from a group that had been decimated, thanks to us. And we got up on his phone and we're listening to it, and he was dealing a lot with black street guys from East New York. And so my boss was like, let's shut this down. We're not going up, we're going down. But when I went to tidy the case up, turns out we followed our guy to a location where he was supposed to deliver drugs, and he took off running. We caught his driver, we got the drugs, but he went in the wind. We found out later he went into a house not far from Kennedy Airport, and the two guys he was supposed to deliver to, they put on vests and they got up against the door and they said, well, if they come here, we're going to shoot and we're going to run out the back. Ooh. So anyway, we finally tracked this guy down, Juan Soriano. We catch him about a week later. His mother and his wife lied to us and said they hadn't heard from him. They didn't know we were still up on his phone. So we arrested them for lying to federal agents. Oh. And then so basically it was, we got your mother, we got your wife, you got to come in now. You know what I mean? So he eventually surrendered and almost heard us this tale of, how he was selling drugs to these guys in East New York, and they had ties to rappers like Little Kim and...
Oh, so he was supplying who? Damion World Hardy?
No, he was supplying guys like Ken Do, Darryl Riley, different guys from Linden Plaza, the Pink Houses. But he was 25, 50 kilo at a time kind of guy, selling down. And
so meaning he was getting hundreds?
Yeah.
100?
Yeah.
And then he would sell somewhere like Ken Do 25 or something?
10, 8, 20, whatever money they had, and then he got robbed a couple of times by them. They set him up. So when it was time to cooperate, he had no problem giving them up.
So you in working your DEA, the drug cases especially, because robbers probably don't have anybody to tell on usually, but in the drug cases, what percentage of people give some information?
You know, it got to be easy at some point, because in the 90s they changed the sentencing guidelines. So, you know, you were getting hammered. What would be like a 5-year sentence state, you could get life in prison if you were a violent predicate felon or something. You got into the drug game. Once they added up your points, you might be doing, you know, it might be a life sentence for you, you know. So people facing those sentences, seeing that their families weren't being taken care of, seeing that they were a low guy in the totem pole, yet they're being treated like they were this kingpin, they were like, no, I'm not. I'll testify, you know.
So more than half?
I don't know if I go that far, but I'll tell you, it started with the Italian mob, and then it kind of spread down to the black mob. With the black mafia, though, to this day, they still are more apt, I think, to not cooperate than other ethnicities. I think they keep that street code still holds a little weight, nothing like it used to. But yeah, it was fairly easy to get one cooperator on a case,
which is all you really
enough to get corroboration, enough to match up phones you were listening to, things like that.
So you were doing all Hispanic targets or
all Colombians?
All Colombians.
Yeah. At one point, we had Mexicans take over delivery routes, and they actually had tractor trailers full of drugs coming over. And
did they have more than the Colombians, or?
Well, it was Colombian drugs being dropped in Mexico. They load up a tractor trailer, and nobody in Mexico was checking it. They'd zip it through, and they would carry things like, you know, huge loads that were so difficult to unload with a high-low, whatever, that you could secrete drugs inside of like big vats of things and stuff like that. And so nobody bothered checking them. And
how was the only way you would hit one of them would be, I had to tell you about that.
Maybe a random customs thing where they ran one of their sophisticated like X-ray kind of machines across it, but that takes a lot of money and effort, time. There's only so many trucks you can do a day, and with NAFTA, there was thousands of trucks rolling through a day. So it became the choice way. No more dropping bales in the ocean, no more planes landing on an airfield late at night or throwing the bales out, you know. So this was a good way to do it, but the people that they had doing it were not sophisticated when it came to multi-kilo management and transportation.
Driver.
They just weren't good. And we had a case. My partner Tony Castiglia was the case agent. They were former Mexican military guys. And so to give you an example of how crazy it was, is we get up on 4 phones simultaneously, and we have translators. And so the tradition is when you flip the switch to start listening to the calls, everyone in the group comes up, and it's like you wait for the first call. And that's like it's like the christening of the case, you know what I mean? So that first phone rings, it's one phone call and the other one. So you have one translator and the other translator, they're sitting 3 feet apart, listening to the same phone, essentially. And the guy says, like, where are you? And he's like, well, I'm at the place. What place? You know, the place. What place? He goes, 169 dash, and the guy says, oh, no, never give the address of the place. So we're like, oh, shit, we were this close to getting there. Obviously, he's at the stash house. So he hangs up. 5 minutes later, he orders a pizza to the residents.
Oh,
so how stupid could you be? So, you know, they next day they back out a car with like 300 kilos in it. They're going to pass it off to some Colombians. And the Colombians are like, all right, just where's the car? Well, aren't we going to talk first? Like, no. Put the keys in the ashtray and get out of there. Oh, no, I'm not going to put somebody could steal the van. We're right here, just do it. So they're going back and forth, and we can't believe it. So my partner gets in the back of a police car, and he says, do me a favor, chase these guys away from this van. He goes, this car parked there. He goes, hey, what are you guys doing around here? He's laying in the back seat. There's a lot of, car theft around here. Get out of here. So the Colombians take off. My partner jumps in and steals the car with over 300 kilos.
Now, were you able to charge anybody?
Well, no. So he drives it down. We drive it to DEA headquarters. I'm in a McDonald's on foot, And all the Mexican dudes are in there, and they bought Happy Meals. And when they saw the car flying down the street with a guy in it, one guy dropped the Happy Meal, and they were like this. So they get on the phones, and now they start talking about killing the Colombians. They stole from us. And the Colombians are going, hey, you brought heat. The cops are here. We're out of here. You took the car. No, we didn't. So now we think we're going to have a war.
You mean between the Mexicans and the Colombians?
Right. So they called their boss in Mexico, and he said, all right, take it easy. We have another thing going on later on in the week. So later on in the week, I think it was like 189 kilos, same address.
So they're able to lose 300 kilos and
right. They get another van, 189 kilos. They go to this Queens Center Mall on Queens Boulevard. Dominican guy gets in the van and he leaves. We follow him all the way up to Washington Heights. We arrest him. We seize the drugs, and we put out a fake press release that says that a 5-year-long investigation into Dominican organized crime netted, 189 kilos, whatever, to take the heat away from the Mexicans. So then they're like, hey, they find out about it, and their boss says, don't worry, this weekend Bugs Bunny is coming. So we're following them all over the place. They're having all sorts of weird calls. They had cloaking devices on calls that they made to Mexico. So there were a lot of things that weren't clear, but we did follow them to a hotel near LaGuardia Airport, and a tractor trailer shows up. And one of my partners jumps up after the driver left and pulls the vent, and it's filled with carrots. So we knew that this was Bugs Bunny, and the thing had to be loaded. So anyway, we ended up taking the case down, and we hit, I think it was 1,641 out of that load. And so, it was what was that?
Waters.
Right over here in the bag here.
So you got 2,000 kilos from this one group. That's a lot of...
2,000 in a week?
That's a lot.
So 2,000
That's kilos. One group.
So in a week, there's like 4 Mexican nationals. 2 were military guys. I think one was a colonel.
One was a colonel.
And about maybe 2 or 3 months after this incident, the FBI in Mexico City reached out to us. The guy who orchestrated the whole load was the governor of Quintana Roo, Mexico. So he fled.
For those Quintana Roo is a state in Mexico.
Yeah. So he fled into Belize. He came back. He got caught. They put him in a very posh jail cell in a Mexican jail somewhere. And about, I want to say, 10 years ago, I got a call from an investigator in the U.S. Attorney's Office, guy Jimmy Motto, and he said, hey, they turned him over to us. So
so he sat in Mexican jail for 15 or 20
So we're going to
years?
prosecute him.
What year was that? Late 90s?
No, that the incident happened?
Yeah.
96.
Okay, so if you got a call 10 years ago, 2015, so he did 20 years in Mexico.
Well, no, he was hiding in Belize for a while. So when they caught him, I don't know. And I forget how long he did in the Mexico jail.
Maybe.
But he took a plea. I don't know what it was. But, the thing that's funny about this whole thing, it's not funny too, but at 2,000 kilos, these people had no record in the United States. We took it to the state for prosecution. They took a plea and got like 5 to 10 years in jail. Now, if that was crack cocaine and I was from the ghetto.
Oh,
and it was whatever, I'm going to do, I could do like 30 years based on my criminal history.
If it was 1 kilo, yeah.
Right. So, it was crazy error. But then again, though, the argument could be made that when cocaine hydrochloride was converted into crack cocaine, then came the violence.
But for people that are heavy drug users, they tell you, crack, you're just smoking cocaine. It ain't that much different.
Well, that was certainly the reasoning behind it, that crack, look at the comparison. So powder cocaine users, to me, I think of the stockbroker with endless amounts of money, ruins his career. And the crackhead, I think about somebody who's robbing from their parents, whatever. It's a different element.
I don't think that, do you think that's really that true?
I think there's a difference in the violence that comes with it.
As it just said, but could it just have been that the crack was being sold in more violent communities?
Well, absolutely.
Not necessarily that the crack was causing so much violence. It was just already.
But so that's the reason they changed the guidelines for, freebase and crack cocaine, is that it's that much more dangerous, brings violence to poor neighborhoods, and,
So the black drug dealer was definitely suffering much heavier penalties in general.
Yeah. And you got to remember, I think by like 1993, there was 2,300 homicides in New York City there. Now, take the number of people who got shot and lived. That's a significant amount of people. And then all the robberies, all the assaults, all the things. New York was a super dangerous place. And so politicians thought that this was the way to go. And I think they were right to a certain degree in that era. But I think the system has to correct itself when the drug, when crack cocaine finally was not the drug of choice anymore. It's time to change the rules. And you're starting to see now guys get out of jail who are in their 50s and 60s now, who are really no longer a threat. I don't have a problem with that. There are some violent guys getting out too, though, that I would say is not the greatest thing in the world. There are guys who have violence in their jackets that are getting out because of the
First Step Act and all.
Yeah, revisiting, So World had Little Kim. Apparently they had a relationship. He made himself her manager. He was a super dangerous guy.
Super dangerous.
These guys from these trigger guys from Bed-Stuy and those names, they're more dangerous than Lafayette Guard.
Lafayette Guard.
Yeah, Lafayette Guard's Bloods. They were slinging crack. I'm sure they get paid, but they're also super violent guys. They started robbing rappers. They robbed Buster, I think. Absolute complete psychopaths and bad guys. So
they definitely rap Buster Rhymes.
Yeah, I heard they robbed Buster. They robbed a whole lot of different rappers. And Little Kim did a song with 50. What was it? Candy Shop.
Magic Stick.
And Magic Stick.
Okay, Rose, I got the Magic Stick. I had one second at twice. Yeah, that was her.
Yeah, it was a lovely song. So they wanted a video done together. They wanted something. I forget what happened, but it was bad blood. And World started threatening 50, and 50 wasn't hearing it. So one night, I ended up getting World's phone number. And so one night, they followed 50 from Hot 97 over to their hotel in New Jersey, in Jersey City, and they had a shootout. World tried to kill them. The rumor was Benzino was in the car, the rapper Benzino with World. I got the cell sites, and you can follow them from Brooklyn to Hot 97 to the hotel in Jersey. So they were there and everything else. So we're saying, hey, look, we got to get rid of this guy, World. And
so then how you determined your danger level?
Well, we heard that he was over in Iraq trying to fight jihad.
So you think that's true?
Yes, I know it's true.
So World already went, wow,
Yeah, so I reach out, I forget who reached out. We had the CIA reach out to the Israelis. And they said, we think this guy's gone through Jordan to Iraq. And so sure enough, the Israelis call us and say, he just tried to get into Israel through Jordan. We sent him back. So we were like, well, why couldn't you have held him? Whatever. We wanted to fly over.
So he left Brooklyn to go.
He went to fight jihad.
So he wanted to go to Afghanistan?
No, Iraq.
So he would have been fighting the U.S. government.
Yeah. Because he said he'd become a Muslim in jail, whatever. So anyway, so on his way back, Customs had a case on him, who's now Homeland Security, whatever. And they said, fuck this guy. Let's just get him off the street. So
so he got locked up for custom stuff at first.
Yeah, his crew got arrested for some kilos.
Oh, okay.
And one or more had cooperated. Everybody, the eBay, all those guys, they were done. So anyway, he's done. And so I always felt like, it's funny is if 50 Cent gave, Tut money when he got out, it's kind of ridiculous. Here we are. We saved 50's ass. I can't tell you how many times. 50 and his crew, if they could tell you how many times they had violent confrontations, there's stuff that happened that I became aware of that was just they're lucky they're alive.
Anything you can mention?
No, not really. But we also went after McGriff. We went after World and stuff. So, you know, I think 50 should send me a Christmas present. You know, because he's giving this fucking crook 250. You know, I got to be worth $1 million, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, 50 Cent, if you watch this, send me some love. But anyway, yeah, then there's the whole Jimmy Henchman side. We got rid of Jimmy for him, too. So, I mean, it's like,
did you work the Jimmy Henchman case?
So I was working Jimmy on my own. And what happened was, I was like, let me get a little bit on everybody. So I found out that Jimmy had a gun case. They're the last of the old-time extortion guys. So I found out Jimmy had this open gun case in Virginia. And so we called down. ATF was the arresting agency, I believe, or whatever. So I had an ATF agent, Adam Bruzzese, I used to work with, call down there. And he says, they're not getting back to me. And he gave me that look like maybe he's cooperating, kind of thing. Like, he didn't say it.
Yeah, like, why would they not?
Sorry, they're not getting back to me. So I took that, all right. Could be wrong, but that's the way I went. So then I found out that his brother, Rosemond Kesner, was using Interscope FedEx bills of lading to send coke.
They were putting it in like instrument cases.
They were putting it in whatever, and they were moving keys, and they would send it sometimes to hotels, and then stay at the hotel and get it. Oh, packages arrive for you, or they would try to pick it up once it got to the FedEx facility. They put a hold on it and try to get it there. And then, so I found out that the Kennedy Airport Narcotics Suppression Unit tried to grab Rosemond, and he took off on him. And the brother. So now that's a part of the other case as well, because it's Jimmy with his connections at Interscope and, using their FedEx accounts. Well, the whole beef that started over Tony Yayo smacking. So when I ended up retiring, every case that I was trying to put together on Jimmy was given to the DEA. And through an agent, I was greedy. I wanted everybody, but I couldn't. I had so many cases going, but I wanted to keep putting stuff together because these kind of cases take years to prove. He would have been picked up with the drug gang. Yeah, he wasn't as smart as guys like Haitian Jack. He had a beef with Haitian Jack. He was having people trying to kill Haitian Jack. I mean, why? What is it? Violence just causes problems. You know what I mean? Jack, I don't think ever killed anybody.
He really?
Yeah. He put a hole in you, but I don't think it killed anybody. Shoot you in the leg.
How did you get involved with Jack?
All we ever heard about was Haitian Jack. Haitian Jack. Oh, he's got the music industry locked. He was legendary. I ended up writing a report of investigation, a 302 with the FBI when I was in a group about Haitian Jack. A retired LAPD lieutenant who was working, my friend out in LA, he calls the sheriffs. He goes, you know that guy Haitian Jack you mentioned? Yeah, well, this guy in New York is looking for him. It's like, oh, let's put us together. So we talked on the phone, and I said, listen, the intel I have is this. Haitian Jack is not a citizen. He's a convicted felon, and we could, deport him. Let's go take a shot at him. All right, well, we don't really know where he is. He's out here in Beverly Hills. We could try to find him. So I said, well, I have an informant that tells me that every Friday night he goes to the L'Hermitage Hotel in Beverly Hills and has dinner. So I say, listen, we'll come out on a Thursday, and we'll go grab him on Friday. So the sheriffs go, let's meet at this bar. We'll have a couple of drinks and we'll whatever. So we're having drinks after work for them, and the hotel falls. Hey, he's here. He's having dinner. So now me and, Mark Gaiman, my partner in crime from the sheriffs, we all go down to the hotel. We made a deal with them that we would wait for him to. So I found out that Haitian Jack was a convicted felon. He didn't have citizenship. He was legendary.
What year was this?
We go out, have a cigarette, and I found out that he was going to the L'Hermitage Hotel in Beverly Hills. We established surveillance at the bar. He made it look like he had a lot of money through honest means, but I knew he had some things going on out there as far as marijuana. Well, he was raising money. I think it was for foster care or something, right?
80 or something? Or
no, it's for foster care. And so one year when they made him Man of the Year, the same year they made Clinton the Man of the Year, and they had a picture taken together at this, I believe it was at the restaurant, It's a famous restaurant out there in Beverly Hills, Crustacean. We kind of flipped the extortion game on Jack, and I would call Jack and say, hey, we're out there. What's going on? You know, oh, I'm running a party at Crustacean. And I go, all right, I'm going to stop by. I go, all right, put your name on the list. And I was there with Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder. So, he was tight with Mona Scott and different people like that. But anyway, so we grabbed Jack, and Jack says, oh, yeah, whatever you guys want to do, I'll do. He ends up getting arrested.
Whatever you guys want, meaning he's going to cooperate?
Well, yeah.
Or he's just saying that?
He's just saying. So he goes in, he's in Terminal Island. He's about to get shipped back to Haiti. Me and a U.S. attorney fly out from the Eastern, fly out. We get him out. And so the problem with me and speaking with Jack is that, Jack is all over the place. I'm all over the place. I wanted to try to utilize him as a source. I didn't know how it was going to go.
You knew it was important. You didn't know have an exact thing.
Right. And what would I ever need him for? What could, whatever. Because a guy like Jack is the guy you should be targeting. You know what I mean? He's not the guy you're working up to. He's the guy.
He's the guy.
So I said, but you know what? It's good that I have him where I need him and one. So, so like I said, I get it. Jack could get us into a party. When 50 Cent played the House of Blues, I was there. I caught Jack talking to James Cruz and Chris Lighty, and they looked like they were going to have a heart attack.
So, real? So what was your impression of what was Jack doing out in L.A.?
I heard Jack had some marijuana deal going with the Mexicans. He had whatever he would make doing his parties at Crustacean. He had a really nice apartment on Century Park East over in Century City.
Which is exposed our $4,500 apartments now. I bring out $2,500 there. What was he? Did he shoot a BMF guy?
No. What happened? No, maybe you're thinking of Wolfie from.
No. Didn't Jack shoot someone in a club?
Yeah. What happened was Jack was in a club called Monroe's on Melrose in West Hollywood, and he was with MC Light, somebody else, and he had a beef with two guys there. They were known to him. They had exchanged words. He calmly got up, walked MC Light outside, came back in and chased these two guys around the club, shooting at them to hit them in the legs and stuff like that. And so...
No, he wasn't charged for it?
Right. Well, and then what the funny thing was I had another informant in L.A. who just happened to be outside the club. And he called L.A. sheriffs and said, hey, Haitian Jack just shot up this place. So... then the West Hollywood station was asking around for intel, and who's this guy Haitian Jack? And so they called me. They go, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, he's got to go. Let's just try to keep him out a few more weeks." And I said he's got to be on the run. If he thinks I'm going to grab him, whatever. So let's give it a little time. A few weeks later, I told him, "Hey, I got your S visa for you. Maybe at the Hyatt on the Strip."
You got his what for him?
His S visa, so he would be a legitimate citizen.
Oh, okay. So you lied to him.
I lied to him. So he came in the club, and then he came into the hotel. He walked up a couple of flights of steps, and hey, Billy, how you doing? Shakes my hand. Then everyone comes out from behind the sides and snatches him up. And we did a search warrant in his house. We didn't find the gun or anything of any great interest, and that was the end of Jack. He played out to the gun. They sent him to live in the Dominican Republic, and he's been there ever since. Has he been here? I doubt it. The way things have changed, though, who knows if he'll have a case to come back here under the current Trump administration. And now I really very much doubt that, but in a different administration, I could see him coming back here.
And I love my soldiers. That's one of the reasons why the whole shit with the federal government or whatever like that.
Well, there were young guys from Queens who weren't giving him respect, and they were slapping around guys for murdering records.
Oh, okay. So, E-Moneybags and...
Yeah, Eric Smith is E-Moneybags, and Troy Singleton was Big Nose Troy. And so they kind of hooked up together. They were independent. They were robbers. They were...
Whatever.
He was a rapper from time to time.
But they sold drugs. They were just...
They were like crime in progress.
Yeah.
So we found out about this, and so this is getting really interesting. We got these guys going after the the record label guys, and McGriff's supposed to be, protecting them. And what is he going to do? How is he going to come back from this now? Because the Supreme team of now is not the Supreme team of, the 80s, 90s.
But he had put together, like, how extensive, like, what was the new Supreme, like, what did Supreme have going on, Rose?
So, he had his trusted lieutenant, Black Just, Culber Johnson. There was guys around like Baby Wise, Green-Eyed Born. So there were some serious guys around.
But not as many.
But, they had been doing their own hustle while Prince and McGriff were in jail.
Everyone from Murder Inc. has criminal record. And I would tell my lawyer shit like, yeah, because I love my fucking niggas. And who else is going to believe in my niggas but me?
Okay, this was an interview with Bill Courtney, a retired NYPD detective. He's the one who actually was in charge of the Kenneth Supreme McGriff case that led to him getting life in prison. We did a couple-hour interview. He talks about how many him and his team, well, he was really in charge, took down McGriff. Well, McGriff's crimes took down McGriff, but McGriff, Jimmy Henchman, and Damion World Hardy, who are all three different convicted murderers who all were trying to murder 50 Cent at different times. So he jokingly said 50 Cent should send him some money. He saved his life so many times. So this is just him talking about the Supreme team. We're going to get into more stuff.
And Prince destroyed the Supreme team with so much violence that, they all went away for, either they cooperated or went away forever, So anyway, so now we got this war. This is a really interesting case. And so what happens is Supreme gets money together and he approaches this guy, Wayne Davis, in Harlem. Wayne was a big drug dealer, well-respected gangster from Harlem. He was out. I think him and McGriff met in jail. And McGriff comes to him and says, I need a hit team. I want to kill E-Moneybags and Troy Singleton. So
was that primarily for, they shot Black Just.
Right. So I guess it starts off with disrespecting his...
It was about not giving some money back for a car. It was like $1,000
Yeah. So McGriff, Supreme, tells E-Moneybags, yeah, I got a guy for you. This guy, Spencer Crump, he does cars. Now, however illegal, whatever the scam was, he'll get you a car.
Well, they go in a different name and they try.
Right. I can get you an Escalade or whatever.
But it's going to be $1,500 a month. Yeah.
Right. But it was a scam of sorts, whatever it was. So anyway, somewhere along the line, it's taking too long. He says, I want my money back. So he goes to Supreme and says, hey, I want my money back. Whatever. And Supreme's like, well, fuck you. I don't give a fuck about, whatever. So they have an argument and he has an opportunity to shoot Supreme and he accidentally shoots Black Just during the shooting. And Black Just gets hit in the leg, but it hits his femoral artery.
Supreme had taken him straight to the hospital. They say with a lip. No, but he drove back to the neighborhood and had someone else take him, I think.
No. Supreme drove him right to Jamaica Hospital because we have the video. And he basically drags him out, gets him help, and then takes off running because he has a car full of blood, everything else. He's got to get out of there. So Supreme takes off, and now, like I said, he goes to Wayne Davis. Wayne Davis hooks him up with this guy, Emmanuel Mosley, who was Manny Dog. And
you mentioned it. Okay.
So Manny Dog.
You questioned him?
Yeah, I met with him numerous times. So I was there when we arrested him in Jersey. So Manny Dog was a really smart guy. Good-looking guy, charismatic.
And he had been working at the Hitman?
He could have done anything in the world. He was that kind of guy. Smart, well-spoken.
Pay attention early on when he's talking about the Hitman Emmanuel Manny Dog Mosley, who arranged the shooters for the executions of E-Moneybags and Troy Singleton. And he mentions that the guy's wife had a salon in Harlem, 804, and that it was on Oprah. Well, oddly enough, and I'm not going to put any clips because I imagine they try to get it taken off and copyright strike me, but you can look it up. Go on YouTube, type in Harlem Salon 804. And it's she's using the last name of her, I don't know if it's her ex, it must be her current husband. I mean, She ain't in witness protection. I don't know where he is. She still has her salon in Harlem. She's using the last name Mosley, but look up Harlem Salon 804. She's on bag fuel even. So it's just interesting. So this organized crime, well, there's all these mafia people, Michael Francese and Sammy the Bull, are all over the internet making money. So, I mean, you can't begrudge them that. It's just interesting how, I guess, crime is normal in America. People don't even really go into hiding. So, Bill Courtney, NYPD.
He bought his wife, I believe, a beauty parlor or something like that. So she had the business, and in the daytime, he was staying home with the kids. And at nighttime, he would go out and do hits or do whatever he was doing.
You think he had done multiple hits?
Well, I forget when he pled out, what he pled to, and one of the newspapers referred to him as the Mr. Mom murderer. You know, basically at home with the kids, murdering people at night. So he cooperated.
Because I can look in the eyes of every one of my people and I know exactly who they are. And those people are people who you shouldn't want a fucking problem with.
You know, now we have him cooperating, and we have all these two-way pager records.
Did Reagan cooperate?
Yes. And he's a key cooperator for a number of reasons. But what happens is they come up with the money for the hit. And
how much was...
I forget.
Okay.
Manny Dog puts the...
Oh, this is multiple hits. So this is Troy and...
Right. This is two for one sale. So you got they're out looking for everybody. So...
And were they going to try to finish off 50?
Well, I don't know about that, but we'll do one at a time. What happens with E-Moneybags is he's friends with this guy Majesty, who's his brother was Stretch.
Yeah. And they had a record label.
Walker. Yeah. So Stretch had been hooked up with Tupac and everything else. So anyway.
But they had a gang. They were in a gang called the Young Guns.
Yes. And they're all kind of affiliated with the Young Guns. So they know that he goes to Stretch's old house, Stretch Walker's old house. He's friends with his brother and the family and everybody else. So there's a girl, Nicole Brown, who lives like 2 houses away. So she's one of the lookouts. So whenever he comes around, she alerts the hit team.
Was she like a crackhead or something?
Oh, total crackhead. She's a crackhead, and the hit team's they're sleeping on like in sleeping bags in this flop house.
Oh, and they're hunting.
They're hunting, and they respond to two-way pager records. I just saw 50. He's on here. I saw
the Gotti's sending them.
I don't remember. So they're all on the same network. The Gotti's, I don't think, were a part of that particular communications between Manny Dog and everybody.
But they would have charged them if they were.
Yes. So anyway, so he's parked there one day and she's on the phone. So, well, this is how we find out about it is there's a homicide in Baltimore, and one of Supreme's associates, a guy Victor Wright, how he met Victor, I don't know. He thinks that his partner, K-Ron Claret, is set him up or testified against him or did something. So he wants to murder him outside of McGriff's stash house. They all sharing this, they have a stash house together. So the homicide happens. They find out about the apartment. They're trying to solve a homicide. They do a search warrant, and amongst the
whole idea was it to kill him outside of the stash house. So that's just how
Victor Wright was a total psychopath. Total psychopath. So,
what happened to him?
Okay, I'll get to that. So, amongst the things they come across are a pistol course proficiency course under the name Lee Tootin, and a videotape. And so I go down and said, do you mind if I, make copies of all this stuff? And, oh yeah, you could take it. So we start watching the videotape, and I hear this woman on the phone going, hurry up, he's here, you get him, get here, or whatever. And I go, this has got to be the hit. This has got to be E, whatever. And so when I brought the tape back, I gave it to Tony Castiglia, my partner, and he time-stamped the TV show you could hear in the background. he time-stamped it to that day and time, exactly, the commercials, everything, to her guiding them in to kill.
Why the hell did was Supreme, it sound like he's like a narcissist, like...
Yeah, he wanted it filmed. Like, he wanted it filmed, and I guess he wanted to show probably people who had trouble with it, like maybe the Gaudis or whoever, right? So anyway, so now we have that information, and so that's good. Now we got one act of violence. We could probably prove this one. We'll get Nicole to cooperate. It's amongst his belongings. I go down to Florida, and I show the range instructor in Florida his pistol proficiency course. Oh, that was Baltimore. I'm sorry. He had another one for Florida. Yeah, he was a good shot. You know, we taught him how to shoot. At first he was bad, you know, whatever. So now we have him for possessing a firearm, a felon in possession of a firearm.
For those who don't know, if the feds, anyone that has a felony, if you get caught with a gun, if the feds are trying to play hardball with you about something else, you're in trouble just off that. Right. You can get 5 years like that.
Yeah, so she was on the phone guiding them in, and he was on his cell phone not looking. They pulled up on him and just blasted him from like every angle, and that was the end of him.
That was who was so Manny Dog was the trigger puller, or he got the shot?
Well, Manny Dog, I forget where he was with
but he had other shooters he hired.
He had other shooters. He had a really tight, this kid, Eric Branton, I think his name was, who went by the street name eBay.
Oh, but he did stuff with
World. He was part of World's crew. So, you know, they drafted guys from all over. So then the next hit was Big Nose Troy Singleton. Someone saw him in the Van Wyck Sports Bar. They got to the scene. They waited for him to come out, and they just got him going to his car or in his car. And that was the end of him. So... you know, the rumor mill has always been that the Gaudis put up money for different things with Supreme. The conjecture at the time was that they put up the money to shoot 50, or McGriff was rewarded somehow for it.
Well, now let's go back to the 50 Cent shooting. It is interesting, and I didn't know all this, and I found a picture of him in the paper, Sun. The hit and talk of you didn't come into it till after the 50 Cent happened, but of course, because you did the case, you found out all about that. What do you know about the logistics of the 50 Cent hit?
So
attempted it.
So what happened? John Reagan was our cooperator. John Reagan gets a call one day and says, "We're coming to Brooklyn. You got to hide a car." So he meets him at this garage. He drives the car, tucks it in a spot somewhere way in the back. And he comes out, and this guy, Rob Lyons, his street name was Sun, and McGriff would tell him, "Yeah, we just shot 50. You had to see him twitching. He's got to be dead."
So McGriff was there.
McGriff. So I believe, as you know, my memory is not always 100%, but Sun was like the main shooter. But then McGriff. And McGriff, one of his longtime associates, Chauncey Milliner, whose street name was Godby. These are all 5% names. They were all three of them were armed, and several of them shot. Whoever shot 50, I forget how it went. But anyway, Sun was considered like he put the work in. You know?
And he was, see what makes the Lorenzo brothers, he was rewarded with a job.
So he's rewarded with a job, or let's just say he's not even rewarded. He ends up as Ja Rule's bodyguard. So, yeah, come on. So anyway, so now Reagan tells us about the car. We grabbed Sun one day. Tony Castiglia found out where he was living. We went and grabbed him. We took him to a local precinct. We told him, you know, better cooperate. Get on the train now, because we know what you did. We're going to get you. And he said something like, "Well, if you're going to arrest me, maybe I'll talk to you, but now I don't want to say how." So he didn't cooperate. And
did he get in any trouble?
Well, so then Tony ended up talking to Godby, and Godby gave it up. And
he cooperated.
And well, he didn't cooperate. He told the story and said, "Well, we'll be back to see," kind of thing. And then Godby, I think, since passed away. But anyway, the 50 Cent shooting was certainly a part of the whole case, but it was never charged in that case. It was covered in it. It was mentioned, but it was not charged. And I went after 50 Cent relentlessly. I had
to make a statement.
To get him to come in. And, you know, Jimmy Iovine had tried to get him. You know, he was put pressure on him. I forget one of the attorneys, Cohen, I forget his whole name, over at Interscope was trying to get him. A guy, Bob Kalina, who was one of his attorneys in New York, made a pitch. And I told 50 Cent, you know, we need your cooperation, basically. He's like, good luck, but I'm a street guy. It's not app. So, yeah, so 50 wasn't going to tell us what happened, but we had enough. But then, you know, we had other fish to fry.
Why would Godby tell you the story but not cooperate?
Well, he did. He gave it up, but you know, it's like what are you going to do? Arrest him? You want him out on the street. You don't want anyone to know what's going on. He made the statement already, so...
You think Prince and them ever first Supreme found that out? Address.
I don't think he would care. You know, I mean, he'd be just disappointed, but, you know, Chauncey Milliner was a junkie, and junkies make bad decisions. And so...
Heroin?
Yeah. So, anyway, the first part of that case was the IRS had a financial case against Murder Inc. And what happens is we become aware that the Gotti brothers had these two-way pager communications with a guy in LA named Brett. I wanted to give his last name up. And Brett he's a book. And so the Gotti brothers, specifically Chris, he's into him for a whole lot of money.
So Chris Gotti has lost a lot of money gambling to this LA bookie.
Yeah. And so the bookie tells him, well, look, you owe me a lot of money, but I have these guys, you know, I get guys like doctors and lawyers, they bet with me, and they're back in like New Jersey, and they think I'm never going to come collect. And so he would have guys collecting for him in New York. And B.J. Bryant, one of the members of Murder Inc. Records, was actually going to people's homes in these really rich neighborhoods in New Jersey and saying, hey, is your husband home? No. Well, tell him he better pay his fucking money or he's going to have a problem. And, you know, the next day, you know, the it's paid. So, again, Murder Inc. Records is, you know, involved in it, right? So, the IRS said, we need to put this in the trial to solidify it because, you know, it's interstate kind of, they're making collections from is, you know, wire fraud. You can name a whole lot of charge, guaranteed charge, guaranteed conviction. If they won't go for the biggest stuff, whatever. So Carolyn Courtney, who had the case, said, you know what? It's going to look like we're targeting. Well, what happens? So the interesting thing of this is that the bookie Brett says, well, that Chris Gotti told him that they used to bet the over a lot on basketball games.
So what was your pressure on the bookie? Why was he giving you info?
So one of my LAPD, well, not one of my Orange County DA buddies, a former LAPD cop, we got hooked up through the sheriffs who I used to work with out there, and he knew Brett. He had arrested Brett before and everything else, and said, I can make a go at him. He'll cooperate. So he made a go at him, and Brett said, look, this is what happened. They started making bets, they made some collections, and the way they were winning the overs on games is they had people like Kobe, Coutinho Mobley, and another player, I forget, scoring as many points they could so that they could hit the over.
Why don't they participate in that?
Well, so anyway, he goes, and if you want, I forget which player it was, when he hits the points that they need to win their bet, he jumps in the stands and starts hugging the Gotti brothers, and they're jumping up and down. So he says, if you get the footage of that game, you'll see what I'm saying, and you'll see it's true. So the U.S. attorney said, well, I don't want to charge it. It looks like we're targeting, you know, black people in the entertainment industry. Let's just stick with these guys, whatever. So they end up losing their case. And so... You know,
if they had wanted to play hardball, I mean, they could have put Kobe in the case.
Well, now, years later, I'm at the Beverly Hills, actually, what was it? The Beverly Hilton. And I'm with a retired female Compton cop who's got a big business bodyguard people. And we're bodyguarding a Saudi princess. And I step outside the hotel and I run into Chris Guy. And I go, hey, Chris, what's up? And he goes, hey, how are you? You know, we shook hands, said hello, whatever. Now, we really didn't know each other. We really never even talked. But we knew each other. Yeah. And he was like, how you doing? And I went, all right, well, you take care of yourself. So I go in and I tell this woman, you're not going to believe it. I just ran into a guy I arrested years ago, you know, Chris Guy. She goes, Chris Guy, I know him. Do you mind if I go talk to him? I'm like, I don't give a shit. So she goes out and she comes back in later. She goes, yeah, the Gaudis used to throw poker games at these really high-end hotels. They rent suites, and I used to bodyguard Kobe. So Kobe used to play cards with them and gamble together. So that's why I believe it's certainly possible that that story is true. And then if you look at it in the scheme of things, is it against the rules? Yeah. But it's not like you're making your team lose.
Yeah, but point shaving is a federal crime.
Well, it's not so much shaving, it's you're putting on. You know, you're not shaving off, you're putting points on.
Oh, so does it specifically have to be
it's got to be elite. But what I'm saying is, in their heads, I'm thinking well, I'm just scoring extra points.
Yeah.
You know, I want to win. I obviously want to score as much points as I can. And if I could score even more and help a friend out, I'll do it. I think that's the mindset. And like, it's not like he kept missing shots.
It's probably technically illegal, but to take it into court, you're not going to win.
But anyway, and then that would have been a big thing. That would have been mentioning all these big stars. It would have been whatever. And
if you're going to bring stars in, you better convict them.
So the IRS agent, Fran Mace, came up to me and he goes, these people think this is a ground ball. This is not a ground ball. And the trial, they had really great attorneys. Jerry.
Oh, me, easy out. But when you say me think it's a ground ball, mean
yeah. Like, we'll get at least 1-2 charges if we're gonna win this case. But if we lose the top charges, we got solid ones here, and they did. And the jury, the witnesses they put up there, the attorneys they had, the defense attorneys were phenomenal. Jerry Shargell, Jerry Lefcourt, these are the best attorneys in New York City. They're mob attorneys. They know how to work a courtroom, and they just, they went at these witnesses like, crazy.
So Zagan and Manny Dog were witnesses in that case? No.
So they lose it. So everyone's kind of, despondent down. I can't believe we lost that, and Fran Mace is pissed off because he goes, I told him if they put that in, we would have had it. I mean, the bookie fessed up to it. Like, how could we lose it? And the bookie got paid a visit by some private investigators and said, if the feds come to you, or anyone comes to you, don't tell them the thing. We'll take care of you. So anyway.
And that guy's around?
As far as I know. I mean, I don't want to out him.
Yeah.
But,
he could be. He wasn't that old. He could be alive.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's basically that case. And I had heard that Vanzip was a former associate of Melvin Combs, who was a heroin trafficker. He came in, he was like an underling at the time, whatever, and early on. And when Melvin Combs was assassinated, he was killed, supposedly because he was cooperating or suspected of cooperating. He somehow or another hooked up with Puff when he started gun fan. He was like, hey, I knew your dad. Whatever the relationship is, they were tight. I think at one time he was seeing Puffy's mom, if I'm not mistaken. So we were looking into him. So at one point, a guy called me up and said, hey, I need a favor. Some guy's selling liquid PCP on my block. He's getting it from this guy, Vanzip. So I was in the DEA task force. We got a young agent in. We got an intro into the guy, and we were buying from him. So like one night, I had this jug of PCP, liquid PCP, like a whole water bottle that you would use in an office, I don't know, was that like 10 gallons or something? And it's got tinfoil on the top with rubber bands around it. And I'm driving it in my pod to the fumes are fucking getting to me and everything else. So we're like, fuck this. We're not doing this case. And at the time, it was not an offense that netted any big...
What's that? I thought PCP had harsh cities.
They say that it does. Like, I heard people in LA say that, but we went to a prosecutor and he was like, nah, we need more than that. We're like, well, we're not doing it.
More than 10 gallons of PCP?
So we took it state. The state, he took a plea, and that was the end of that case. So
weird.
Well, we were trying to work our way up, but the guy was unstable. He was constantly talking about, I got guns if the cops come, or he thought people were coming to rob him. So it was unsafe for the agent. The stuff was toxic. We found out that we would need this special, unit to come and test it, pour it in, and, take the dangerous chemicals and neutralize them. We're like, nah, screw that. So, and we were doing other things. We were a Colombian team. So this was a favor I did to a guy. So I knew who Vanzip was. I knew that he bought one of Jimmy's Uptown. I think he bought that club from Jimmy.
Turned it into zip code.
Turned it into zip code. And so later on, so the next thing I know, I get invited to this SOD conference down in Orlando, and I'm with a DEA agent, Eric Henderson. I do some stuff with. I was helping him out. He had a big case on Puffy. It really wasn't going anywhere. We took all his evidence to the National Drug Intelligence Center, tried to get them to put all these financials and things that we had, and it never went anywhere. And that was based off a lot of information that we had about Kirk Burroughs and different people.
Oh, what about Burroughs?
I forget. It's so long ago. There was a drug angle, and the drug angle had nothing to do with Kurt or Puffy per se, but it was a drug case DA had, and he was giving information on Puffy and his group. So
Kirk Burroughs.
Well, Kirk was questioned for it, and he had a civil RICO against Puff, and so DEA talked to him, but I don't think he was really willing to cooperate or do anything major. This conference, and we found out that LAPD started a Biggie task force, and they were going to finally put it to bed because Valletta Wallace was suing. But you know what? In respect to the LAPD, they did their due diligence in many respects. I think the case was flawed initially because the first detective who had it was,
which was who? Was that Poole?
Russell Poole.
So CUP.
Russell Poole was kind of out there, and I don't know the guy or whatever, but he had some demons. He had something. You know what I mean? So he was stuck on Amir Muhammad and all this nonsense. And
you don't think that it's possible that the death row cops, that you don't think death row did that? You don't think this?
I think there would be more information. So they said, do you want to help out? You have all this information, all these people out in LA. I had 2 informants out in LA. I knew Haitian Jack. Maybe I could ask him questions. I don't know. I'm like, yeah, I'll help you out. So we were doing a regular run out there in LA, and we'd hook up with these guys, Greg Kading and all. We'd go out, we'd have some drinks, and everyone got along. We had some fun and everything else. And they started telling us about their case, and I knew a guy that actually used to drive Puffy and his crew around, and he watched them shoot guns out the cars when they were staying at hotels and do all sorts of crazy things. He'd see guns in the car. He was the kind of guy who wouldn't tell, anybody anything. So I had information for them, and then they told us that they had a cooperator, and he had Vanzip driving guns out from New York to LA so that the New York guys could have guns when they came to Los Angeles. So I said, yeah, I know Vanzip, but I was going to try to do a case on him back then. I said, but okay, whatever. So we'd all talk amongst ourselves and saying I don't know about this, And then Kading had a case. He was doing a RICO case, and he got caught on some jail calls to, supposedly prepping his cooperators to say certain things, and whether or not that was a misunderstanding or whatever, the whole case got thrown out.
And Kading's no longer allowed to testify in cases?
Well, so once you have that issue, you're always going to be cross-examined. Did you interfere in a case to do that? You know what I mean? Once you have an issue with court testimony or that type of thing, it's in your jacket, and defense attorneys can see it. And so, the one thing that I found troubling was after Greg had that issue where he's, he was telling these guys what to say. Hey, remember, you got to say this. Did he do that with guys like Keffe D? Because the Keffe D story, as I understood it, is that Vanzip was driving driving guns to LA. And there's no way in hell that would happen. And then I never heard from that story.
Now, Vanzip does have an LA connection because he was Keffe D was his source for PCP.
Yes, but he doesn't have, well, then the other thing that I find really hard to believe is that Vanzip passed him a gun after the shooting of Tupac. I said, here's a gun.
Before the shooting.
Well, I'm sorry, after the beatdown, hey, we have trouble with these guys. We want to go kill Tupac, but we don't have guns. What should we do? Oh, here's a gun right here. How does anyone believe that that's true?
Well, you think that there's a distinct possibility Kading coached Keffe D?
I think I've seen this happen with agents and detectives is when you have somebody who is telling you a story and they watch your body language when they give you an answer and you lean over and you say the things to him like, well, do you think he did this too? If he was doing this, did he do that? Yep, so now you start seeing, now my value as a cooperator is going up and up and up. And then, don't worry, you'll never have to testify. Keffe D, they built a drug case against him.
And it was sending cocaine to Virginia or something?
I think that's what happened. I'm sorry, I forget. No, I thought it was a PCP case they did on.
Well, there was also probably both, but it was in Richmond, Virginia.
So, long story short, so anyway, Keffe D is told, you give us what we want, we'll let all your homies off, everything is finished, you're straight with us, just give us what we need. And one of the things they had him do, again, completely ridiculous, was fly to New York, and I was there, go up to the club zip code and say, hey, remember me, your buddy? I gave you the gun that night. So why would you show up there? Now, he knew he couldn't say anything right. Hey, that was some night, huh? Yeah. Remember when you shot Tupac? What are you going to say?
Right.
So, well, let's just go there and we'll show that he actually has a relationship with him and he knows him, and that kind of corroborates the story. It means nothing. So the only thing you would do in doing something like that is tip the guy off that you're cooperating. Not everyone's going to smell a rat right there. So that was a ridiculous thing to do. So when it was all said and done, Kading gets jammed up on the RICO case he's doing, and next thing you know, he's gone. So I had seen him afterwards. He retired. I had seen him out in LA a few times.
So that kind of put an end to his career.
Yeah, and he asked me, he goes, hey, do you think it's against the law if you would, let's say you were writing a book and you expose somebody as a cooperator?
Oh, he asked you.
So I said, well, it's kind of like, I think it's ethics problems. I said, but, he goes, well, it was covered under a proffer session. So I said, well, a proffer is really a let's get to know you session, and then you decide whether or not you and the government are going to get together and have a cooperation agreement. So I don't know what they did. I don't know if they had a cooperation agreement with him. He always talks about this proffer session. So anyway, so he's out of it.
It had been the point when they got rid of his charges for the drug case?
It's after that. Kading gets, he runs and he has this problem.
Well, what did Keffe D do to get rid of the drug charges?
He promised to cooperate, I guess.
Okay, but we don't know who he did it or what really.
Well, apparently it was him and some of his crew. And he said, we'll let you and your whole crew off. You just got to give us what we need.
On the Tupac, on the Tupac, right? Okay, that's what I'm saying. What's connected.
But they initially targeted him on the Biggie thing.
Yeah.
So, it's so bizarre. No, I don't know about Biggie, but I know about Tupac. Tell her, what you got? Isn't it, did you do this? Did you do that? All of a sudden this thing gets blown up. Keffe D is like, all right. Now this is the way I think it happened. And I think Keffe was there. I think he built this story up to something bigger than what he really had something to do. And when Greg leaves and he writes a book, how do you out somebody who agreed to cooperate with you, give you your case? I'm going to help you solve your case. Just please leave me out of this. If I don't have to testify, that'll be great. If I have to, I'll deal with it when I have to. Well, Greg is gone. The case really doesn't have any corroboration because everybody's dead. And Greg wants to go make himself the hero and write a book. He broke the rules. Like he violated, he put this guy's life in danger. And it also sends out a message that if you cooperate with law enforcement, they might tell on you later on to make money. So it was a terrible thing to do. And, you know, he doesn't seem to, you know, it seems like he's a bit of a sociopath where he doesn't have any empathy for this guy. And the other reason I say he seems like a sociopath is he coaches guys on the phone what they have to say. He's over controlling.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very corrosive to the criminal justice system.
So, you know, a lot of, you know, cops aren't supposed to talk bad about cops, but we're talking now as people, we're talking about people who have social media channels, anything else. Greg has one, I have one, and I'm critiquing him because I know guys from the LA sheriffs and LAPD who got screwed on this case. They provided lots of the information. They were there doing investigations right after they happened, whether they were gang detectives or sheriffs in gang units, you know, Compton cops, and Greg saves the day, and they're pushed back. They even pushed people out of the case that were requested by bad guys who were talking to, you know, Greg, hey, I'll only talk if this guy comes in, and they didn't want him in there. They wanted to get credit for the case. So there's a lot of bad feelings from these guys. They've, guy Mike Cowett kind of got screwed in the case. He was an LA detective with the LA sheriffs. You know, I think he had a lot of, like all of us, we had a lot of fun hanging out with Greg. Big party, have fun. And then he went and did this, and he destroyed all the work the task force did. He thought only about himself. And so everyone's kind of like, they didn't get any credit for anything they did. And, you know, he writes the book, he gets the movie rights, he gets whatever, and everyone else is pissed off. Was it really worth it? You know what I mean?
What do you think is going to happen in the, I mean, you think Keffe D is going to beat the case?
I don't think he's going to, so Keffe D now writes a book. And I think he basically wrote the book because if Greg got away with writing the book, I certainly can. It's nothing they don't know. But by writing the book, you're making...
See, that makes him part of a murder, whereas if I'm in a car and then you'd see somebody and just lean over and shoot him, and okay, if I drive you away, I'm accessory after the fact, but that's a 0 to 5 offense. That's not conspiracy to commit murder.
And the other thing that's so silly about this is it's just a murder. There's famous people involved. So is it... Now, you're just chasing fame.
Oh, fuck, he's always chasing money.
And money. But I think for him, it's more fame. The other problem with LA is that they have to wait for the DA to file charges. So like in New York, when you make an arrest, you go down to the DA's office and said, all right, this is what happened. He stuck a gun at her. She gave him all her money, and then we caught him a block away. And they're like, all right, boom, we'll go to grand jury on Tuesday, and then you're done, right? And then you just wait for the trial or a plea bargain, right? Whereas in LA, you seem to be waiting in limbo for them to make up.
Do you think LAPD is well, it's a smaller force, less well-funded. They seem to be much less effective, than the New York PD.
A high-ranking member of the LAPD who worked in other agencies told me this. She says, the LAPD cops are so well-trained, they're better than New York City cops in a lot of respects. But their detectives all want to go home at 6 o'clock, and they're just not like us. And I think a lot of that has to do with the competitive nature of the detective system in New York for promotions and everything else. But I like to think that we're a bigger department. We do a lot more things than they. I'd like to think that NYPD detectives are sharper than LAPD detectives. Limited number of experience, which is, I think, how Kading had this problem with the RICO case. Like, how did you get involved? The thing, though, it's something that never should have been done. It's like, I have 2 cooperation agreements signed by major stars. You know what I mean? I would never in a million...
Oh, you do.
I would never experience that. Yeah. I could sell one of them to 50 Cent, probably for $1 million, or Jay-Z for $1 million if he wanted to get even with this other guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But why would you do that? You know what I mean? Like, we're supposed to have that integrity. When you get in a room and you sign a proffer agreement, a queen for a day, and we feel each other out, we're never going to use that against you unless you testify at a trial and you say otherwise. That's a secret between...
There's no legal remedy against Kading for that?
No, the FBI apparently told Keffe D that he should sue Greg, but I guess it's like it's probably something that's...
So weird.
It's probably something that's never been done before.
Right.
It's such a shitty move. Yeah. Like, no one's ever done it before.
So it's new case law almost.
But it's a despicable thing to do where, hey, your wife, your kids, tell them to move, because I'm writing a book about everything you told me. I mean, But he seems to be the self-ordained, you know.
Well, he's been on all the shows. I mean, he makes money.
Yeah, I mean, this should be for a lot of this should be for fun. Or start your own channel. I've been in rooms at Proppers where I started to see that the guy was lying, and we talked to the U.S. attorney. I'd say, I don't know, what do you think? I don't know. And then you talk to the detective that brought this guy in, or the agent, and they say, I don't know, well, he's pretty consistent, you know, whatever, because they think like they're so happy that they have this, because they're not the kind of guys that would railroad somebody, but they have this wishful thinking. And then you say, listen, we got to ask him. And it happened on a case where this guy he told the same story over and over again, but it didn't sit right. And when he was confronted, he was like, yeah, I made it up. You know, yeah. All right. Well, cooperation, and he pled guilty. So his cooperation agreement, he maxed out on his sentence. So that's a dangerous game to play. And he lost out on that. But nothing is ever worth railroad somebody. If it's just a slight question that somebody's innocent, you have to put it up front. You have to discuss it with somebody, everything else. Who would ever want to do something like that, you know? So,
okay, where you have your own channel. Tell us about what you got going on.
So I started a YouTube channel. I did a season of interviews with a lot of Italian mobsters. I've been on Michael France's show. I've been on Vlad. My YouTube channel is called The Proffer. We're starting up. I have about 6-7 hours worth of, good interviews I haven't put up yet. I'll put that up. Chris Colombo from the Colombo crime family, a detective who used to investigate organized crime in the cold case unit, found all the dead bodies were hidden in East New York. The NYPD had to pay for them to repave the street, and the chiefs were like, could you find a body somewhere where you don't have concrete? This is costing us a lot of money. But if I had pictured when I first became a cop that I'd be sitting in a room with mafiosa telling me their life stories, or I'd never believe it in a million years.
Oh, the world there's no secrets. There's no
Yeah.
nothing.
Who would want to be a crook now?